So last class we were discussing about an important law called as the Kirchhoff's law, right? And I remember solving two problems also. So is there any doubt from that particular concept, guys? Or is everything clear? Can I proceed to the next concept? Can I move to the next concept? Okay. So the next concept that we are going to discuss is called as Wheatstone bridge. Please write down this heading. It's called as a Wheatstone bridge, and it is an application of Kirchhoff's law. It is an application of it. Let's see what it means, okay? So I'll explain it from the textbook. Listen to this carefully. So, as I told you, Wheatstone bridge is an application of Kirchhoff's rules or laws. So what exactly does this bridge mean? So if I consider a circuit like this, okay? If I consider a circuit like shown in the figure, where I have 4 resistors, out of which 3 resistance values are known to us and 1 is unknown, okay? If you take those 4 resistors and connect it in the form of a quadrilateral, I repeat, if you take the 4 resistors and connect it in the form of a quadrilateral such that between, so you'll find 2 pairs of endpoints of diagonal. That is, you'll find 2 diagonals, okay? Across one of the endpoints of diagonals, there will be a battery or a power source that is connected. And across the remaining 2 ends of the diagonal, okay, according to the, along the other 2 ends of the remaining diagonal, there is a galvanometer that is connected, okay? So, if this kind of an arrangement is done such that where you have 3 resistors known and 1 is unknown, then this arrangement is what we call it as a Wheatstone bridge, okay? I'm sorry, was there any network issue? So what was the last point that you could hear? Guys, what was it?
About the galvanometer, sir.
Yeah. I was asking, what is a galvanometer? You can guess. I'm sure you would have heard this word.
It's used to measure potential.
Potential is voltmeter. Voltmeter. Meter is a device which is used to measure. Volt is the potential difference.
Sir, it's used to measure the presence of an electric current.
Okay. You're almost there, right? If you remove the word measure, your answer is 100% right.
Sir, I said presence. Presence of the electric current. If electric current is passing through the circuit.
Presence cannot be measured. It can only be sensed. Okay. That is what I'm trying to stress. Because if you use the word measure, no, galvanometer will become a measuring device. Galvanometer is not a measuring device. It is only a sensing device. What you told is 100% right, except the word measure. Okay. So galvanometer is a device which is used to sense the presence of current. In the sense, if there is a current which is flowing through the circuit, this so-called galvanometer will start showing signs of it. In the sense, so you know what is an ammeter, right? So ammeter is a device which is used to measure current. If you look at an ammeter, right, you'll have a curved structure like this, and the reading 0 will be here. And the pointer initially will be here when there is no load. When I say load, I'm talking about an electrical load which is connected. So as soon as you connect the load, as soon as you start giving the load, then the pointer will start getting deflected like this. So initially it is at 0, it start getting deflected in this way. Whereas a galvanometer will have its 0 at the center, and the pointer will be in this way, so that if you start passing even a small amount of current, the galvanometer will start showing a deflection in the rightward, or it can be in the leftward. It will start showing a deflection. Okay, listen to this carefully. So if the direction of the current in the circuit is clockwise for the time being, let's assume it is clockwise, then let's say the galvanometer is showing a deflection to the right. If you are able to reverse the direction of current by changing the polarities of the battery, the galvanometer will start getting pointed in the leftward direction. Okay, so that is why galvanometer is only a sensitive device which is used to detect the presence of current. Am I clear, guys? Okay, so this kind of an arrangement is called as Wheatstone bridge, and in that Wheatstone bridge, the important device that we use is a galvanometer. So having all these points in mind, let's try to derive certain conditions for the balanced Wheatstone bridge. I'll tell you what is a balanced Wheatstone bridge. Before that, let me copy this. Listen. So let's say the battery is supplying a current I. Now this current I is going to this junction A, and at the junction A, what is going to happen, guys? Can you tell me? So the current will get split into two parts. Guys, I'm sorry, I have some network issue. So what was the last point I told?
The current gets split into two parts.
Current gets split into two parts. One is Ig, and the remaining current that is going through the unknown resistor is I4. Okay. Similarly, I1 is going to come to this junction, and Ig is still coming here. This Ig and I1, let's say they are getting added, and that it is going as I3. Okay. So let's say it is happening in this kind of a format. Now here I need to tell you one important point. Ig is called as the full scale deflection current. Make a note of this point. You will be using this in practicals also, because there is a
Sir, you're freezed again, sir.
Guys, I'm audible now?
Yes, sir.
I'll check what is the connectivity issue later. Sorry for the trouble. I'll check it. Okay. So IG is called as the full-scale deflection current. Let me explain what this full-scale deflection current means. If the pointer is at 0 initially, okay, let's say the pointer is in this way. It has the full-scale deflection current. Okay, as the name suggests, that is what is a full-scale deflection current. So have this point in mind. That is what I wrote it as IG here. Okay. As I told you, Wheatstone bridge is an application of Kirchhoff's law. Now, what are all the loops I can take into consideration? Can you guys tell me what loop can I take? I can think of the loop A, B, D, A. So if I take the loop,
Sir, you froze again, sir.
students just stay on the line. I will try to connect through another network.
Students, I can't show my screen alone. I didn't get my laptop. Yes. So if I take the loop ABDA, okay, then the loop ABDA, how do I apply the Kirchhoff's law? So can I write it as I2 into R2 with a negative sign plus, see the resistance of the galvanometer also, if I call it as RG, like how I call the current as IG, then what is going to be the value of IG into RG here? Is it going to be positive or negative? This negative plus I1 into R1 is equal to 0. Am I clear with this?
Sir, could you explain what's full-scale deflection current?
Sorry, I didn't get you. Could you explain what?
IG, sir.
IG is called full-scale deflection current in the sense, I told you about this galvanometer, right? So its pointer is going to be at the center. When you start supplying the current, it starts showing deflection in either of the directions. When you start supplying the current and if the deflection is shown to the right, such that it touches the last division, then that point, then the amount of current that you have passed, such that the galvanometer shows the last point of the deflection, last point to the galvanometer is what is called as full-scale deflection current.
Okay.
Huh? Okay. Now listen. So I hope this equation is clear, guys. Similarly, if you take the loop,
I have a doubt in this.
Yeah, tell me.
equation. Could you explain how we got minus IGRG, sir?
Because when you go from B to D, you're walking in the direction of current. I told you, no? Resistance of the galvanometer is RG. Because what is a galvanometer and how it works and all those things, you learn it in the next chapter. Except that galvanometer also has resistance. So if it is a resistor in meter, if you're walking in the direction of current, it is a negative value. Correct?
Yes, sir. Okay, understood.
Yes. Now, if I take the loop BC d beta, if I take the loop BC dB, tell me how to write the equation. Let me call this resistance as R4. When I go from B to C, it is I4 into R4 with a negative sign. When I go from C to D, it is I3 into R3 with a positive sign. Correct? When I go from D to B, it is IG into RG with a positive sign. And let me call this equal to 0. And let me call this equation as equation number 2. See, here comes an important point, guys. I want you all to make a note. So there is something called as balance point. Okay. So what exactly does a balance point mean? It is the point at which, so it is a point at which the galvanometer shows no deflection. So the point at to be achieved, then the Wheatstone bridge is said to be balanced. Am I clear? Okay. That is what I'm trying to say is the value of I2, I1 and everything will get split in such a way that at this point, IG will be equal to 0. That is possible only under one scenario. Okay, that is by adjusting the values of I1 and I2 in such a way that IG is going to be equal to 0. Okay, so under balance condition, when IG is 0, then I will write it like this. Under balanced condition, equation 1 will change as. So what will happen to equation 1? Equation 1 will change as I2 into R2 is equal to I1 into R1. Accepted? I2 into R2 will be equal to I1 into R1. Let this be equation number 3. Similarly, equation 2 will change as. So what will happen to equation 2? Equation 2 will change as I4 into R4 is equal to I4 into R4 is equal to I3 into R3. Let me call this as equation number 4. Now comes an important question, guys. Under balance condition, how is the circuit going to look in the first place? So listen to this. Under balance condition, when I say IG is equal to 0, then can I say that it is as good as this galvanometer not being present itself? Right?
Yes, sir.
Because that branch itself is going to be absent. Under that scenario, what will be the relation between I2 and I4? What will be the relation between I2 and I4? So when IG is 0, can I say the current I2 is no more going to get split into the galvanometer's division. Rather, I2 will completely start flowing into I4 because they both are in series. So can I say I2 is equal to I4? I3, both these things are under. So if that is the case, then observe what is going to happen to equation number 3 and 4. I will write I2 into R2 is equal to I1 into R1 as it is. Whereas this thing will get converted as, in the place of I4, I'm replacing it with I2 into R4 is equal to, in the place of I3, I'm replacing it with I1 into R3. Okay. Now, if I divide both, I1 will get cancelled, I2 will get cancelled, which implies R2 divided by R4 is equal to R1 divided by R3, or R4 is the unknown resistance. R4, okay, I'll leave it as it is. If you observe, under balanced condition, a Wheatstone bridge will behave in such a way that the ratio of their resistances will be in the same proportion. Or I can say the ratio of the resistances will be the same. So this is an important mathematical condition that you guys need to understand.
Sir, could you go up?
This side, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 1 minute. For the sake of copying what I will do, I'll make it simple for you guys. Now it will be easy to copy.
Done, sir.
That's good. Everybody has copied it? Okay. If you look at the sequence in which we are studying, we have seen what is Kirchhoff's law and we have seen the application of it. Now we will see what is meter bridge. The next topic that we are going to see is what is meter bridge and what is application of it. So the next topic that we are going to discuss is meter bridge. The reason why it is called meter bridge is because it is a combination of a meter scale and Wheatstone bridge. Okay. So to put it in simple terms, meter bridge is nothing but a practical application of Wheatstone bridge. See, by now I hope you guys would have understood why is a Wheatstone bridge used. Why is a Wheatstone bridge used? Mainly to find the unknown resistance, right? So to find the unknown resistance, how many resistances are needed to be known to you guys?
3, sir.
So you need to know the 3 resistances, out of which you will be able to find the 4th one. Okay, now listen. So I'm going to show you 2 things. One is the wooden frame. On this wooden frame, there will be an L-shaped metallic strip placed in this way. Okay, where you will have certain knobs here and here. Similarly, there will be an other L-shaped knob which is placed at the other end. It is also made up of a metal. Okay, and you will have a knob here and a knob here. If you ask me why a knob is there, knob is only to establish an electrical connection. Okay, like a screw kind of structure. You will have so that you can insert the wire there and generate the connectivity. Okay, similarly, you will have these two knobs. I'll label them, okay, so that you will understand. A, B, or else I'll call it like this. A, B, C, and D as of now, for the time being, okay. Between the points A and B, there will be an unknown resistance connected. And between the points C and D, there will be a known resistance connected. It is up to us, okay. There is no hard and fast rule that this only should happen. Next is, you exactly have a screw at the center, okay. So there will be a screw at the center to which the galvanometer will be connected, okay. And one point that is missing here is you will have a wire here. You are able to see some patch. Actually, there is a wire on which you will be sliding a device called as a jockey. This is there, no? This black color thing. This black color thing is called as a jockey. So the jockey is nothing but a metallic rod which is used you can hold it, and at the bottom you will have a conductor. And at last, you have an important thing which is nothing but a scale which is of length 1 meter. Guys, please let me know if you're clear with whatever I explained now.
Could you explain the jockey part again?
Okay. Jockey is nothing but a metallic rod. It will be like this. It will be a metallic rod. You will have a screw at the top. For the screw at the top, you are able to see the screw. Screw at one end of the screw, top screw is connected to the galvanometer. Okay. And the other end, the metallic conductor is there. No, that is kept in contact with the wire. You will keep moving on the wire.
The wire is a long wire, right, sir?
Wire actually missing in this diagram. This is the wire. There will be a wire by default. So I'm not in academy. Actually, we have it in the academy. If possible, I'll take a snap and send it to you guys. Okay, we have the galvanometer, we have meter bridge and everything. Did you understand? Rohan, am I clear?
Yes, sir, understood.
Okay. So if I take a top view of it and represent it in a diagrammatic format, I told you about the two L clamps, right? Right? And you have a flat metallic conductor like this, a rectangle shaped one. Now, this whole rod, L-shaped rod, they call it as A, and the flat one, they call it as B, and the whole L-shaped right side one is called as C. So between this screw and this screw, there is a resistance that is connected. For the time being, let's say R is the unknown resistance. They have given, see, R is the resistance to be measured and S is a standard resistance. It is a reference one. Now what is going to happen? The middle of this clamp will have a screw where one end will be connected mark. Okay, you have an arrow mark which is establishing. So you have a connection between them, right? So the jockey is the arrow mark which can be moved like this. As you keep moving on this wire, you can observe some changes in the deflections in the galvanometer. Okay. So why we are using a galvanometer and everything, you will understand it slowly. Before that, you need to recollect one thing. Meter bridge is based on what application? It is an application of the Wheatstone bridge, right? And how is a Wheatstone bridge working? Wheatstone bridge is used to measure the unknown resistances under what condition, guys?
Balance condition.
So if I need to know whether the Wheatstone bridge is balanced or not, what is the important device that is going to tell me about the balance condition? It is a
Galvanometer.
galvanometer. And that is the reason why we are doing it. And I told you in the beginning itself, to identify it as a Wheatstone bridge with the current knowledge that you have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw this circuit. Observe. So I'm going to redraw this in this way. So if I take the point A here and I'll take the point C here. Okay. So this is point A. Let me call this as point B. Okay, this whole thing is B and this point is D. So A is there, C is there, B is here, and D is here. So between the points A and B, how many resistors are going? Between the point A and B, how many resistors are going?
One, sir.
And its name is R. Between B and C, how many resistors are going? There is one more, which I call it as S. Okay. Now, between A and D, I'm able to see this wire. Correct? I told you about that wire, no? That wire rho into L1 divided by A. Similarly, you guys tell me what would be the resistance between the points D and C. What would be the resistance between the points D and C?
Rho into 100 minus
Very good. Rho into 100 minus L1 divided by A. As simple as that. So between the points B and D, there is a galvanometer connected. Right? And between the points A and C, there is a power source connected. The only difference is you have a key here because you are going to do this as an experiment. Now, will you guys accept that meter bridge and Wheatstone bridge are the same? Right. Now you will have a better clarity. When I told you about the Wheatstone bridge, you would have not 100% understood that what resistance. See, you have this wire, no? The wire AC is there, no? On this, what are you doing? What device are you moving? You're moving a jockey. When you move it, there will be a particular point somewhere between this A and C, which is of length 100 centimeter or 1 meter. That's why it's called as a meter bridge. Okay. And let's say this is the balance point. And let's say this is the balance point D. At this instant, what will happen, guys? Can you tell me? IG will be equal to 0. So in a practical application, how can you find IG is 0? Just like this. So if I take this as the galvanometer with the reading at the center as 0, now if this is IG 0, no? If you move to the right of D, then you can see a deflection in the galvanometer to the right. If you move it on the left of D, you can see that the galvanometer is getting deflected to the left. Only between the deflection in the left direction and the right direction, you will be exactly able to find the balance point. Guys, did you understand? And that at that instant, the meter bridge is said to be balanced Wheatstone bridge. Okay. So I already like this. R4, R3, R1, R2. So R4 divided by R1 is equal to R3 divided by R2. In the same logic, using the same logic, tell me what will happen here.
Sir, could you explain that point again? I wasn't able
Which point?
to. This
Which
one,
point?
which you told R1, R2, R3, R4.
Okay. So there are 4 resistances connected like this. No, R1, R2. 1 minute. Okay. So R1, R2, R3, R4 is there, no? You're able to understand this? So
Yes.
under balance condition, R4 divided by R1 will be equal to R3 divided by R2. That's what we derived, no? See, maybe here you got a different equation. If you're doing a comparison, did you understand what it's told? So if you break it into 2 equal parts, the ratio of the resistances on the right hand side will be equal to the ratio of the resistances on the left hand side, provided you take in the same order. When I say same order, upper by lower will be equal to upper by lower.
Okay, sir, understood.
Okay. In a similar context, you guys tell me what will happen. If I break along BD, then R divided by
Rho L1 by A equal to N divided by rho into 100 minus L1 by A.
(100 minus L1). S into L1 divided by 100 minus L1. Clear? So this is how you practically find the unknown resistance using a device called as a meter gauge.
So I have a doubt here.
Please tell me.
So at 50 centimeter, IG will be equal to 0 here, right?
No need. That's not the case. It is not exactly at 50. You can get the balance point even at 28.3 centimeter from point A. That is where people make mistake. They think it is going to be 50. No, it is not. It is going to be exactly 50. See, for example, R will become, if I put 50 here, what will happen?
L1 will be equal to 50.
Sorry, guys. Again, I had some network issue. 1 minute. I think there should be no more issues now. Let's see. So till what point was I audible, guys? Rohan, can you tell me till where was I audible?
So you were telling me why it can't be 50.
Yeah. Did I explain that? If you put
No,
L1 as
sir.
50, then 50 by 50. Okay. So if I put L1 as 50, then 100 minus L1 will also be 50. If I substitute it here, then R will be equal to SR. So generally,
Yes,
in this case, what is R? R is the unknown resistance, right? And
yes,
S is the
sir.
known resistance. So if the balance point comes at 50 every time, then if you know what is the known resistance, then by default unknown resistance will also be of the same value. If that is the case, we need not do the experiment at all. Right? So we need not do such a tedious process and all those things. So balance point need not be at 50 always. It can be anywhere from the point A. 50 is just a coincidence that one of the points you can have it. I'm not saying you cannot have it. You might have it depending, provided the unknown resistance that is given to you is exactly as the same value as that of this.
So, sir, it
Am I clear?
depends on the current passing through the system, sir.
Nothing to do with current. Nothing to do with current. Because is this mathematical equation telling you anything about current?
No, sir.
Obviously, no. Yes. So it purely depends on what thing? The values of the resistances that you have taken into consideration. Seriya?
Yes, sir.
Yes. See, because why I'm saying this, try to understand. R by S is equal to L1 divided by 100 minus L1. R by S is the ratio of the resistances. L1 by 100 minus L1 is the ratio of some lengths. So depending on the values of the resistances, the lengths will be in that ratio. Okay, wow?
Yes, sir.
So that is the meaning. So but thing is, when you do this practically, you will understand things better. But unfortunately, you cannot do it, right? So what you can do, there is something called as, there is a website called as OLabs. There is a website called as OLabs, which is developed by Amrita University. What you can do there is you have simulations of all the applications in that particular website. You can actually do and see. You can do this experiment on a virtual scale and see. They would have explained it practically also. After that, you can use a simulation and try to move the device and then check it. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So this is the condition. Actually, the derivation is simple. Okay. Now, let's try to solve a problem based on this. Now, I think network is better, right? Is my voice clear?
Yes, sir.
Good. So listen to. In a meter bridge shown in figure 3.27, 3.27 is nothing but this only. Copy. In the figure shown in 3.27, the null point is found at a distance of 33.7 centimeter from point A. Rohan, I think this should answer your question. Okay. So it is at a distance of 33.7 centimeter from A. So case 1, L1 is 33.7 centimeters. So obviously, how much is going to be the value of 100 minus L1? It is going to be 66.3 centimeters. Now, what about case 2? If now a resistance of 12 ohm is connected in parallel with S, the null point occurs at 51.9. So case 1, case 2 is L1 is equal to 51.9 centimeter and 100 minus L1 is how much? It is 68.1, no?
48.1. 48, sir.
Oh, sorry. Whatever it is, 48.
48.
So determine the values of R and S. Okay. So this is first scenario. And let this be the second scenario. So in the second scenario, what is happening? There is a 12 ohm resistor connected in parallel with S. When you connect it, this kind of a scenario is taking place. Okay. So from case 1, what is the mathematical equation that we can write? R divided by L1 is equal to S divided by 100 minus L1. Seriya? Similarly, the second scenario, what will you write? R divided by L1 is equal to, what is this equivalent resistance? 12S divided by 12 plus S divided by 100 minus L1. So R divided by L1 is equal to 12S divided by 100 minus L1. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
So why did I write 12S divided by 12 plus S? Because it is R1, R2 divided by R1 plus R2. That is the concept I used. Okay. So if I take this as equation number 2 and I take this as 1 divided by 2 is going to give us, or 2 divided by 1 is more apt. R divided by L1 divided by R divided by L1. Let me call this as L1 dash is equal to 12s divided by 12 plus S divided by 100 minus L1 dash divided by S divided by 100 minus L1. So what will happen? R and R will get cancelled. S and S will get cancelled. One unknown, one equation. Solve for it. You will get the value of S. Once you get the value of S, substitute it back in equation number 1. You will get the value of R. Done, guys? So with this, the major part of this chapter is over. The next concept that we are going to discuss is cells in series and parallel. Shall I proceed? See, actually, this concept comes way before all these concepts. But the reason I held it because I wanted you to be comfortable with Kirchhoff's law. So this is the concept I'm going to discuss. Cells in series and parallel. Sharia. So I'll explain it from here. So when you say the cells are connected in series, suppose you take a cell, it has a positive terminal and a negative terminal. You take another cell that also has a positive terminal and negative terminal. If the negative terminal of the first cell is connected to the positive terminal of the second cell, similarly, if you have a third cell with a positive and the negative of the second is connected to the positive of the first, then we say that the cells are connected in series. Let's say the EMF of the cell is E1 and the internal resistance of this is R1. Here, if the EMF is E2 and the internal resistance is R2. Here, if the EMF is E3 and the internal resistance is R3, then our job is to find what is the equivalent EMF of this particular combination. By now, you guys know what is equivalent combination. So I'm going to talk about cells in series. When do you say the cells are in series? When the negative of the preceding cell is connected to the positive of the successive cell. Okay, when this kind of a connection goes, then that is what we call it as cells in series. Okay, so E1, R1, E2, R2, E3, R3, En, Rn. So the equivalent circuit for this is going to be by replacing with one particular cell, which is going to be E equivalent and R equivalent. Like how the current is going to be the same for the resistors in series. Here also the current is going to be the same for the cells in series. Okay. Let's say all these cells put together are releasing the current in one direction. Let me say that current is I, and here also let me say the current is I. So this point is A and this point is B. Okay. Let me say this point as P1, this point as P2, this point as P3, keeps on going. Okay. Now, one concept to be recollected is when I explained you the concept of the EMF and internal resistance and the current to be I explained a concept called as terminal potential difference. Do you guys remember that? VA minus VB is what? Do you guys remember this expression? I told you there is a terminal potential difference across the ends of the cell when the cell is getting discharged.
Yes, sir.
Guys, are you? Yes, you remember, right? Discharged. Now, in a similar way, so when do we say the cell is getting discharged? When the current is away from the positive terminal, we call it as discharged. Sharia? Now, listen to this carefully. If I take the first cell alone, if I take this point as A and this point as B, then the EMF is E1 and R1 and the current I take it as I. Then what is VA minus VP according to the above equation that I gave you? Is it not E1 minus I into R1? Correct, Ada? Similarly, VP2 minus VP1 minus VP2. You guys tell me.
E2 minus IR2.
That's it. Very good. Similarly, VP2 minus VP3 will be E3 minus IR3. Similarly, VPn minus 1 minus VPn is equal to En minus I into Rn. It keeps on going like this. Correct, Ada? Oh, sorry. VPn minus VB. Because the last point is point B is equal to En minus I into Rn. Okay. This whole thing is for the cells on the left hand side, for the circuit on the left hand side. Now, what I did between the points A and B, I replaced the whole set of the cells with one particular cell, which I call it as equivalent cell, which is supplying the same amount of current that is done by all the cells put together. Okay, having all these points in mind, what do I call VA minus VB as? Is it not E equivalent minus I into R equivalent? Guys, accept it. Let me call this as 2, because I'm going to write the first equation. So E equivalent minus I into R equivalent. So this is VM minus VB according to the right side circuit. Now, how do I get VM minus VB from this circuit? I will just add everything. If I add everything, observe what is going to happen. VP1 cancel, VP2 cancel, VP3 will get cancelled, VPN and VPN will get cancelled. And what is that you are left out with, guys? Aren't you left out with VA minus VB is equal to right hand side? What is going to happen? E1 plus E2 plus so on till En minus I into R1 plus R2 plus so on till Rn. And this equation I'll call it as 1. Students, am I clear? Okay. Now, from 1 and 2, since the left hand sides are equal, can I conclude that the right hand sides will be equal? E1 plus E2 plus so on till En is minus I into R1 plus R2 plus so on till Rn is equal to how much term? Is equal to E equivalent minus I into R equivalent. If I do a comparative study on both the sides, what do I get the equivalent EMF as? E1 plus E2 plus so on till En. And what will be the value of R equivalent? Is it not going to be R1 plus R2 plus so on till Rn, guys? Accepted? So what I'm trying to say here is, when the cells are connected in series, okay, see, generally I have to make a small correction in the statement that I gave you. When I say cells are connected in series, the most important point you concentrate is the current flowing through each cell. If the current flowing through each cell is the same, then I call it as series. Okay, because there is another type of connection also possible. I can say this is also a series connection where the EMF here is E1 and here it is E2. In this case, what do you think will happen to the net EMF? They will get subtracted. Okay, guys, are you able to understand the difference? The new circuit that I've drawn says the negative of the first is connected to the negative of the second. When that is the case, the EMFs will get subtracted. Whereas in the series connection that I've given here, the negative of the first is connected to the positive of the next. So this is the formula for equivalent EMF when the negative and the positive terminals are connected together. But there might be a scenario where you will have the same terminals, same nature of terminals being connected together. Under that scenario, the EMFs will get subtracted. Am I clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. And the next concept that we are going to see is cells in parallel. See, wherever you see the word parallel, what comes to your mind? Very important. In parallel connection, what is going to be the same?
Potential.
Right. So, if I have the cells like this, E2, R2, and E3 and R3. If I take this point as AB, A dash, B dash, A double dash, B double dash, what can I say about VAB, VA dash, B dash, and VA double dash, B double dash? All the three are same since they are connected in parallel. But what will happen in the parallel connection, guys? What parameter will be different? It is the current I1, I2, and I3. Okay, for simplicity, I've taken three down. I1, I2, I3. And the equivalent circuit for this will look something like this. E equivalent and R equivalent. If I take these two terminals as AB, then the current here, if I take it as I, what is the relation between the current here and I1, I2, I3? We know that I will be equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3. Sharia? Now tell me one thing, guys. Can I write I1 as VAB divided by RAB? Okay, this is one way of writing, or I will write it like this. So VAB is equal to how much? Is it not E1 minus I into R1? Which implies I1 is how much? E1 minus VAB divided by R1. Listen, if I call all these things as V, then can I write it as E1 minus V divided by R1? That is the equation number 1. Using the same logic, even without writing the step, can you tell me what is going to be the value of I2?
E2 minus V by R2.
That's it. E2 minus V divided by R2. and I3 will be equal to E2 minus V divided by R3. It keeps on going if at all you have more number of cells, right? But what is the value of I? What is the value of I? Using the same logic. E equivalent minus V divided by R equivalent. Now, we know that I is equal to I1 plus I2 plus I3. Then E equivalent minus V divided by R equivalent. E equivalent minus V divided by R equivalent is equal to E1 minus V divided by R1 plus E2 minus V divided by R2 plus E3 minus V divided by R. Right? This will be E1 by R1 plus E2 by R2 plus E3 by R3 minus, can I take out V common? 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2 plus 1 by R3. This side I will write E equivalent divided by R equivalent minus V into 1 divided by R equivalent. It is just a mathematical rearrangement, nothing I did. Okay. When I do this mathematical rearrangement, can I say E equivalent divided by R equivalent is the same as E1 by R1 plus E2 by R2 plus so on, plus E3 by R3. And what is the value of 1 by R equivalent? It's nothing but 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2 plus 1 by R3. If you observe, is this formula not similar to the resistors in parallel? Not similar, it is the same thing, right? The only thing that we did here is, the only extra part is finding out what is the equivalent EMF. So to do a comparative study, in the case of cells in series, the equivalent EMF is just the sum of the individual EMFs, whereas in this case, you cannot directly find the value of E equivalent. Rather, you need to know the value of R equivalent, and then only you can find the value of E equivalent. So I hope if n cells are there in parallel, you know how to extend it. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the only two topics that are left out are color coding of resistors, color coding of carbon resistors, and potentiometer. Okay. See, potentiometer, as I told you previously, I'm not going to teach now, because it's not as simple as meter bridge, where you can at least try to visualize something. You need to do this experiment to understand. If possible, I will try to show it practically at some point and explain it, or else I'll explain it later once you do practicals in your school. Okay, there'll be some point you will be doing it, right? So the last topic that is left out in this chapter is color coding of carbon resistors, and this is the 5-minute job. We'll finish it now itself. So if you have your textbook, there's the thing. See, listen. See, till now we were discussing that there is a concept called as resistance existing for a conductor, right? So generally what happens, you can produce a you can manufacture resistances for two purposes. One is for commercial purpose and one is for case studies or some experimental purpose. So generally, if you commercially produce resistors for domestic use or in laboratories, there are of two major types. Okay, one is called as a wire-bound resistor. Wire-bound resistor means, have you guys ever seen a rheostat? The rheostat will generally be in the form of a cylinder. Around this, if there is a wire like this This is what we call it as a wire bound resistor. So to put it in simple terms, if you take a copper wire and wind it in the form of a coil, you can call it as a wire bound resistor. And the next one is called as the carbon resistors. Okay. So wire bound resistors are made by winding the wires of an alloy, for example, manganese, constantan, nichrome, and similar ones. Okay. So the choice of these materials is dictated mostly by the fact that their resistivities are relatively insensitive to temperature. That is the reason why they use it. So these resistances are typically in the range of a fraction of ohm to few hundred ohms. So when it comes to wire bound resistors, one of the major restrictions you will be facing is you cannot make a resistor of a very high value of resistance. So what happens is, for practical purposes, you might fail. See, if you look at the applications of resistances, right, it is not used only for electrical circuit, it is used for electronic circuit. See, for example, you use your mobile phone, use a laptop and everything. There will be a resistor which will be used, which will be very small also. And those resistances are nothing but they are called as the carbon resistors. Okay. So resistors in the higher range are mostly made from the material carbon, and carbon resistances are compact, inexpensive, and thus they can find extensive use in electronic circuits. When I say electronic circuits, laptop, mobile phone, your tab, everything, all these things fall under the electronic devices. So when you look at the carbon resistors, they're generally very small in size, and their values, if you want, the value of the carbon resistor will not be given to you. If you go to a shop and buy a carbon resistor, no, it will look something like this. So it looks something like this with colors on top of it, such that each color will tell you about a number. That's what is called as the color coding of a carbon resistor. Okay. So resistors, color codes. Suppose you see a black color present on the resistor, that black color will have a number 0. Okay. And it has a multiplication factor of 1. Suppose you see brown color, then brown will have a number 1 and the multiplier is 10 power 1. Multiplier means you need to multiply it with 10 power. Now, I'll tell you what a multiplier means. Okay. Red, if you see red, you will have 2 and its multiplier is 10 power 2. In a similar way, black, brown, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and green. Okay. So these are all the colors. Sorry, gray and white. So these are all the colors which have numbers associated with them, and you have a multiplier available for them. That is this number which is put as the power of 10. And the last one is there, no? One minute. The last one is there, no? This white color line. That white color line will be either made of gold, silver, or sometimes there will be no color itself. So if you see gold or silver, then their multiplier is 10 power minus 1 and silver is 10 power minus 2. And for the last line, there is something called as tolerance. This tolerance means the extent to which you are allowed to make an error. For example, by using the color code, you'll find a resistance. No. So in that resistance value, let's say you have got the value as X. Then tolerance 5% means that value can be X plus 5 by 100 times X or X minus 5 by 100 times X. That is the meaning of tolerance. Means you can have, like let's say you have found the value as 470 or 500. So 500 plus 5% of 500 or 500 minus 5% of 500. It can be anywhere between those two values. So that is going to be an approximate value that we are going to find. Okay. So how to find the color code is, these resistors have set of coaxial colored rings. Okay. The first two bands indicate the first two significant figures of the resistance in ohms. The third one represents the multiplier. And the last one represents the tolerance. For example, let's take this resistor itself. Okay. So what are the colors you're able to see? You're able to see 3 red and silver. You should always go from left to right. So red, according to this color coding table, represents a value of how much? 2. The other red also represents 2. So the first 2 numbers represent the resistance in ohm. Into the third number represents the multiplier. Again, it is a red. So what is the multiplier of red? It is 10 power 2. Okay. And what is the tolerance of this? It is silver. So tolerance is 10%. Guys, did you understand what I'm trying to say? So the resistance of this resistor is how much? 2200 ohm with a tolerance of 10%. So that's what is written here. So tolerance is always written as plus or minus 10%. Like how you write the final value after finding the error. In a similar way, shall we try to find for this? Observe. I have yellow color. Yellow is how much? Yellow is 4. Violet is how much? Yellow is 4. Violet is 7. Brown is how much? Brown, the third number is multiplier, 10 power 1. So 47 into 10 power 1 plus or minus, what is the color? Gold. Gold, the tolerance is plus or minus 5%. So 47 into 10 ohm plus or minus 5%. Guys, are you able to understand? This is what we mean by color coding of resistor. See, sometimes in exam, they'll ask you a question like, suppose, give the color code of a resistor whose value is 5700 plus or minus 5%. Can you guys tell me? So 5700 is nothing but 57 into 10 power 2 ohm plus or minus 5%. So 5 stands for which color? Green. 7 stands for which color? Violet. Then 10 power 2 stands for which color? It's for red. So the first color should be green. The first color should be green. Second color should be, okay, as of now accepted, violet. And the third color should be red. And what should be the fourth color? It should be a gold. Guys, am I clear? So this is what we call it as the color coding of resistor. And this table has to be memorized by you guys. You have to memorize it so that you can write down all these color codes. So with this chapter is over. Okay. Now it is your job to study. Guys, any doubt?
No, sir.
No doubt.
Yeah. That's good. So you start studying. Okay, so there will be a test on the second chapter and third chapter as well. I'll not combine it. Second chapter test will be somewhere in the next week, and third chapter will happen the week next to it. So start studying. So the next class, I'll be starting your fourth chapter. Maybe what I will do is I will solve few problems. I'll solve the NCERT problem, then we'll go to the fourth chapter. The meanwhile, revise before the next class. Okay. I'll see you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.